Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is the show where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. And joining me today is John Howard, property developer, investor, mentor, author. What
You
else,
normally say, have I come down from Ipswich? Well, I haven't today because I've come from the Carlton Club in St James where I stayed last night, which is a conservative
We're
club.
well aware of
only
that.
for conservatives.
We're well aware of that due to the last lot of publicity.
I was not involved in that.
Oh, right.
In any shape or form.
Okay, right. Well, I think we better clean the conversation up, don't we? Well, good to have you here anyway,
Thank
John.
you.
I'm sorry you haven't come from Ipswich.
It's only an hour, of course.
Wherever that is.
Yeah, it's only an hour.
But anyway, okay, now joining John today for the first time is Ben Richards, MD of Aura Homes. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. Where have you travelled from?
St Albans.
Oh,
actually, not too far.
Not too
just
far.
outside the M25.
Okay. That's closer than Ipswich.
It is, yeah. I'm not really sure where Ipswich is. So.
No, I'm
That's
not.
just,
No.
that's just
Nobody
rude.
is.
That's just rude.
Okay. Right, enough of the frivolity. We'll get on with the questioning. And John, you're going first. The government seems to accept there is a huge housing shortage right across the country, but doesn't seem to have the solutions. What would the panel think could be the one thing that can be done to increase the production from developers as a matter of urgency? So in other words, we're talking about right now, not someday never.
Well, right now, I mean, the previous government, of course, brought in PD, permissive development in 2012, which helped greatly, and got rid of months and months of, planning and sorted it out that way on commercial to residential. I think at the moment that the Section 106 is a real problem. The social housing requirement is a real problem because and that's only going to get worse under a Labour government, and that will hold back, especially smaller developers, the people who are building between 3 and 10 houses.
But then 106 isn't going to apply to them, is it?
Well, it will do. Under this Labour government, everything's going to apply, and it's only going to get worse. They've already said that you can't negotiate the social housing requirement. There'll be no negotiation on that whatsoever at the moment. If you can prove you're not making 20%, you can reduce the social housing requirement. I mean, Ben's the architect and the developer knows more about it than I do, to be honest with you, probably. I'm sure he does. But planning reform is required. Will they be able to do that as quickly or as efficiently as they think? I very much doubt that. They're promising to build 1.5 million houses, but of course most of those will be social houses because they're a socialist government and they believe in social housing. They don't really believe in home ownership, although they're making out they do.
I'm afraid I'm very sceptical about it all. I think when these governments, whichever colour they are, say we're going to build, so who's we? I don't know who we
It's
is.
people like us, isn't it?
Well,
exactly. I mean, it's the small developers. I mean, in the 1970s, small developers, I think, accounted for something like 60-70% of the market, new homes market. Now the top 10 house builders are 60-odd%. Social housing and housing associations really make the difference. The small developer, like Ben, like me, I think we're about 7% of the market. So they've got an awful lot to do if they're going to build 1.5 million homes over the period of the government. At the moment, we're building 230,000 homes a year. The truth is we probably need to build 500,000 homes a year. That's the truth.
I'm not even sure that with the kind of material call that's going to come with the rebuilding of certain states around the world after all these wars and conflicts that we're having, I'm not sure you're going to have enough bricks to build that many homes.
Well, that's where alternative modular comes in and everything else,
doesn't it?
Yeah, which has its own issues anyway.
It has its own issues. Half the factories for modular have closed down last year in the UK.
Well, isn't that, John, because of financing? Because the difficulty is when you're a developer, you budget for your materials coming in over a period of time. So you take one of these 70-storey buildings, it's probably a 2-year programme, is it? 2.5 years. So you buy your materials step by step, or you buy to store if you think you can get a good price on something. But with modular, the factory won't pay them the day you order, really, don't they?
And of course, the banks won't pay.
And they won't pay.
The banks won't pay for it unless it's on site. Now, I went to Homes England, which was the government bank, still is, I suppose, the government property bank, and they were coming up with a scheme where they funded the gap between it coming out of the factory and ending up on site and being paid for by a bank. But I don't know what happened to that idea. But it is a problem. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
Needs solving.
The funding is massive on those things. You have to front load so much of the costs, and most development lenders don't want to do that. They don't want the risk with it, and the amount of, like you say, factories that have gone bust over the last 2 years.
I've quoted this before. When you do a big development, like I've been involved with some of the ones down here, so you go along to your bank and you say, well, it's going to be this, that, or the other. And I say, right, well, what we want to see is 20% of the sales off plan before we'll fund it. So then, you go out to the sort of Asia Pacific areas or whatever, you get all these forward orders, you come back and the bank say, yeah, well, that's all very well, but these are overseas people, we'd have a job suing them or making them complete. So can't you get some institutional investors here? So you go out, you get some institutional investors, they want a discount because they're buying so many floors.
Yep.
So you go back to the bank and the bank say, yeah, well, these are institutional, but you've discounted a lot, haven't you? So that's ruined your valuations.
And again, that's for the big players, not
Yeah.
SME developers.
Well,
we're not
right,
going to get institutional investment for that type of thing.
No.
We're not really knocking MMC, because I do think there's a place for it, but the funding lines are so difficult. Sustainability wise, they're great. Quality wise, they're great, but you've got to actually get them built in the first place.
But I'm seeing now there's a development just across the road here. You can see it from here. In actual fact, emblazoned across the front of the building is the name of an insurance company who've obviously bought the whole building as a buy-to-let investment, really. And that's the way we're going to have to go, isn't it?
There are big players coming into that field now as well, like insurance companies.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Ben, do the experts think that building design and architectural considerations are pushing up the price of housing, pushing many of the developments past the point of affordability? Now, let me just quickly tell you, I was taught years ago, and so, well, with architects, they understand just like you do that if you build a square building, it's quite economical to do. But if you have a load of corners and curves and all the rest of it, the architects love that because their fees are based on the complexity of the design and the cost of the design.
Bit harsh, isn't it?
Is that a bit
But
harsh?
it's the first time Ben's been here. That's a bit harsh.
It is. Like it's some architectural practices will base their fee on percentage of construction cost. Others will base it on a fixed fee. But fundamentally, we as an industry, really, we want to get stuff built, want to design amazing things, but
get awards.
I get awards. I think when architects are working with developers, a good architect will understand the commercial pragmatic approach to things, and that there is a cost associated. And you'd like to think that they're telling their teams that every line they're drawing costs money, and some people don't necessarily see that. So architects want to design beautiful buildings, developers want to design and build sensibly and from a buildability perspective and a cost perspective, but there has to be a blend and an understanding of both sides.
I suppose really, I mean, this really started with our current monarch, didn't it, some years ago, when he started to sort of say a lot of the buildings going on are sort of blighting the landscape here, there and everywhere. But it costs money, doesn't it?
It does.
And when we're in a cost of living crisis, young people are struggling to find the deposits, struggling to meet the mortgage payments. I think we have to rethink some of this, don't we?
I think with the question is about sort of design and if it's pushing prices up. I don't really think it is. I think the market is the market. What's happening is the margins for developers are getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed because the government are incentivizing for sustainability. All of the building regulations have recently changed.
And that's only going to get worse.
That's only going to get worse. You want net zero carbon by 2050. All of the build costs associated with that in terms of insulation in walls, solar panels, air source heat pumps, all that stuff adds to the build costs. Now the market's kind of the market. Build costs are going up and up and up. Landowners are still wanting what they want for their land. Their expectations are still very, very high and aren't managed.
But that's the bit. The only bit that can change in any of that is the land value. Mm-hmm. The land values will go down. And you're, Ben, in a unique position as an architect and a property developer to understand this better than any other architect. Because I do get frustrated with architects somewhat who say, oh, well, I want to win awards. It looks lovely. Yeah, but it's too expensive to build.
There's a place for that.
There's a place for that, and that's my own home, not a development.
Yeah. There is a lot to say that great design and appealing buildings, can fetch more on the market.
Yeah.
But it's a real balance to find.
It's totally balanced, I agree with you.
But I think the only thing that's getting squeezed really is the developer margin, because landowners expect what they want and they'll sit on it for 2 years. We're talking about productivity here and actually delivering new homes. If landowners aren't willing to move their price down.
Well, I think under this government, you'll find they'll force people to build quicker. And they'll be more pragmatic on that than the last one.
Yeah. But Ben, what just from an architect's point of view, what's you look at these residential buildings that we're building around here. What's in your mind in terms of life expectancy of that building?
It's a very good point. We work in London with buildings that are 200 years old, and they're probably more solid than some of these. But 60 years is
a lot of these. I mean, I can tell you now, on a lot of mortgage forms around here, the funders are saying, does this building have a 25-year life? And that's on new builds.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
And I mean, I've done exercises. There's one development down the road here, actually. If you paid the market price for each and every apartment and pulled the thing down, it would still be buying the equivalent land just around the corner, So it's a difficult thing. And that building is just 25 years old.
Yeah.
And of course, here in Canary Wharf, we had the benefit in the early days of it being Docklands Development Corporation, where you could build whatever you want as long as it hit building regs. There was no planning permission as
that
such.
might be a way back. That might be coming back. You never know. To speed things up. That'd be nice.
I think that's my point. I think some development areas like that, with your handcuffs taken off, might be a good thing. But anyway, there we are. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break when we'll be asking John and Ben more of your questions. Hello, welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm with John Howard and Ben Richards. Welcome back, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John,
yes.
As potentially a new developer, do the experts think that following the new train line station developments is a safe way of choosing development sites, or is this too risky, as perhaps in the case of HS2?
Well, what I would say is quite often the uplift in value has already been brought in prior to this gentleman or this lady actually looking at these sites. So if the railway line is being built now, that extra value in terms of prices going up has already been anticipated.
It's already factored, yeah.
Already factored in, probably. You've only got to look at that in Birmingham, in Digbeth, where the HS2 comes out. That's already been priced in quite a while ago. And quick story, I bought many years ago a parade of shops which was meant to be next to a new shopping centre that's being built. So I thought, how can I go wrong? It did get built, the shopping centre, but they turned it around the other way. So all I've got is the arse end of it. So my shops are looking over the sort of, what's it called, where all the lorries come in and all that. So it just shows you.
Goods entrance.
Yeah, the goods entrance. So you just got to be careful. And I wouldn't just rely on that. I think that's a good thing, but I wouldn't just rely on that.
No. Do you know what? I think one of the common themes that we hear in here on Question Time and on other programmes is the one factor people forget, even a lot of experienced developments, and it's called time. I can remember when I came to London, first of all, I worked for Terence Conran at Butler's Wharf, which was an amazing development. It was a warehouse conversion right overlooking Tower Bridge. It had got everything. But, you couldn't get a taxi driver to take you over the bridge. He'd say, no, I'm not going over there, I might not get back, so that kind of attitude. And it took 20 years for that area to really take off. And that was only because the mayor's office was constructed and put there, and it brought in so many thousand new workers and people and really revved the area up. I mean, just because to start with, there were no shops, there was no infrastructure. So time is a critical thing.
You've got to be cautious, you've got to be careful. And if it's your first development, go safe.
Yeah.
Go safe.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Look at demographics, and there's so much information you can get off the internet now. Do you agree?
Almost too much, probably.
Possibly.
Do you know what I do?
Yeah. Go on.
If I go somewhere I don't know very well, and I know most places around the UK these days, I jump in a taxi, spend 10 minutes, tell the taxi driver to drive you around. He'll tell you more in 10 minutes than any estate agent will, or anyone else.
Do you know one of the first consultancy jobs I got? I won't tell you the area that it was in, but I jumped in a cab, and I got there and I said, I'll get out here. And he says, you're brave, mate. and I said, what do you mean? And he said, there's usually blood outside that KFC at night here. Yeah. And I thought, oh dear, is this indicative of the problems I'm going to have with this development?
And you know, Ben could design the most wonderful development, but if
it's in the
worst area, guess what? However lovely it's going to look, it isn't going to be worth doing. So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about this, Ben? What are the signs that you can follow? Are the sort of demographics that you can follow?
I kind of agree with John in terms of like find somewhere with good fundamentals first if it's your first development. There is a lot to be said for being first in certain locations. I used to work for the Berkeley Group, and the development that I worked on was pretty much the first one on the 9 Elm Strip. By the time I'd started working for them, they're selling 2 beds for like $450. 2 years later, they were flipping on the contract for 650 grand because there was so much investment going in, and the house prices started to boom. But you know, that was kind of luck. You know, it's not.
Yeah, but they also
find those
they're
every
a
now and again.
serious developer, aren't they?
Yeah, they know what they're doing. Yeah. But there is a lot to be said for you know, when you've got an area where there's lots of investment being ploughed in, it probably is going to help to increase prices and give opportunity.
I mean, I think the one interesting thing you've said there, not the only thing, but one of the interesting things you've said is that developer is a particularly strong developer. Yeah. And if you look at what they're doing, just remember they've got the finances to sustain their presence and the power, haven't they?
And the power to get the planning.
So hang on to the coattails.
Yeah,
that would be my
a lot to be
theory.
said for that. Don't be first in sometimes. Yeah. Let someone else take that risk. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Right. Next question. I've been trying to sell my house for some considerable time now. My agent has suggested I bring in interior designers to lift the presentation of the house. Do the panel think this is a good idea? Or, as many of my friends say, it's just a matter of price?
I would absolutely do that, and I've seen it firsthand, the power of staging something. People want to move into somewhere, and when they first see something, visualize themselves living there. If there's no furniture and it's just a blank wall, or from a development perspective, it's a blank wall, just empty space, a lot of people don't have the sense and visual understanding of seeing how they're going to live in it.
Hence the value of a show flat.
So exactly, so furnishing it, adding a show flat, I've seen things fly off the shelf far faster, sell for more. We often do furnishings and show flats where we buy the furniture, and we almost use that as a negotiation tool. So if it's a first-time buyer buying the flat, they often don't have their own stuff. Mm-hmm. So we might have bought the 2-bedroom furniture for £8,000, but we offer it to them for £10,000. So not only are we selling it faster, we're selling it for more and making a markup on the furniture.
Yeah, I've been involved in developments. We've had 15 or 20 show flats over the life of the building.
Yeah. We've moved stuff around, actually.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did with the one, 150 flats we did. That poor old show furniture got moved about 7 times. Oh, another show because we sold that one, we've got to move it again. And again, and in the end, they all fall to bits, that furniture.
And it's
anyway.
because people haven't, I suppose because they're not involved in the industry, they don't seem to have the imagination, do they? You know, I can remember going and consulting on a development in Knightsbridge, actually, in a fantastic position just opposite Harrods. And the developer couldn't sell these things. And I walked in and they were bare shelves. There was wires coming out of the wall where wall lights went. The fireplace was empty. And they looked cold and they looked, you know, and I said, well, I mean, it's quite funny. They were a bit overreacted a little bit. I went and I said, well, look, you know, why don't you put a sort of nice, you know, remote control gas fire into the fireplace? Why don't you put some wall light? And the MD of the developer, he says, right, order 35. I said, no, don't order 30 at a time. Just do one at a time, but make it look like it's somebody's home that somebody wants.
Yeah, spot on.
Because for a developer, it's no problem putting in a wall light or whatever else. But for Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith, it might be a huge barrier. They might think, I don't like touching wires. I don't know where you buy wall lights from. I mean, you must have seen this.
Oh, massively,
a million times.
I mean, the top tip that I had from seeing what the Berkeley Group did on our schemes and the marketing suites that they created is it's not just about the visual. They would try to attack all of the different senses. So you'd walk in and you'd have textured wallpaper for the people that like to go around and touch stuff, and you'd have smelly sticks in the toilets because people. It's another sense that you're hitting. So with our marketing suites, we try to hit those different senses because different people react in different ways to them. But from an interior design perspective, and a house that you're trying to sell, again, I've spoken to people that do staging furniture, do interior design. The amount of stories that I've heard where it's been sitting on the market for 6 weeks, they've got someone in to stage the property, 2 weeks later they've got an offer at asking price, and it shifts loads faster. I think it's an absolute must. If you can find the funds to invest in sprucing it up, you'll make it back in dividends.
It needn't be that expensive, and there's a lot of things you can do yourself. I mean, I think one of the worst things, estate agents will tell you that they walk in and the first thing they get in the hallway is a row of, shoes there and Wellington boots, and you don't want to see that. Your point is exactly right. People want to walk in and think, wow, this is where I want to live.
One tip if you're buying a show flat. Check how wide the bed is. It's probably a three-quarter bed. It's not a full-size bed. So when the bed's it's like all the furniture. It looks okay to sit on it, and then you're like, it's a bit small. That's because it's three-quarter size to make the flat look bigger. Oldest trick in the book. Oldest trick in the book.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, especially in London.
Especially in London.
I don't know about Ipswich, but
no, we don't do things like that in Ipswich. We don't need it. It's a fantastic place.
Of course not. Yeah. Okay. Anything else to add, Ben?
No, I think fundamentally, if I were looking to sell faster, sell for more, I would be staging and I would be getting an interior designer in to spruce it up.
And it could be as little as £1,000 or £2,000. As you say, it's just touches of detail, isn't it? And it's the same to a degree. You will know, John. A brochure for your development. That brochure is not going to sell it. That brochure is going to give that person confidence when they go home.
To show it to their friends almost more than anything else.
This is what
absolutely.
Yeah.
This is what I'm buying. Look at this. Look at this. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say the other key thing just to touch on is photography. It's so important.
Professional photography.
Getting that right sells.
Are we fans of walkthroughs?
Nowadays, VR, 3D walkthroughs.
Those 3D walkthroughs are very good these days.
Yeah, I mean, this was 8 years ago when I worked for the Berkeley Group, but we had a full 1 to 50 scale model. They also then brought in the 3D VR.
How expensive are they?
I've been to their factories.
Fortunes, those models.
The amount of wires that go into them as well, they're miles and miles, because nowadays you can basically click a button and say, I want to buy flat 32 on the 14th floor, and it lights up that flat in the model.
That's amazing.
Which is crazy. And then you've got the 3D virtual walkthroughs as well, which I think it all just draws back to the fact that people want to visualize themselves living there.
Absolutely.
And if they can do that as early as possible, you're going to sell faster.
I totally agree.
Okay, well, there we are. That's all we've got time for today. So a big thank you to John Howard. Thank you very much,
My pleasure.
John. You should say as always.
As always.
Right.
I'll carry on.
Ben Richards, thank you very much for coming in. I hope your first taste of Property Question Time hasn't been too hard or too
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Good. Well, we're very pleased to have you. I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time.